Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 11th June 2023. My name is TSV Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Haribol TRSV nectar NECTAR nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of what we have been doing in my past few videos. Kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of my other videos. So today let us discuss the topic that is very much in the back of my mind, which I have been contemplating and meditating for the past few hours or days. According to Swami Yogananda Paramhans, God is too complex an entity to be reduced to a rule by mere mortals and humans like us. It is very, very difficult for us, almost impossible for us to understand God. However, we can try to do that by first remembering that all, whether divine, human, or demonic, are actually creations of God. There is a spiritual whole fire from which several sparks emanate regularly. This is just like sparks flying out of a huge bonfire. These spiritual sparks are those of which we all, whether divine, whether human, or whether devilish and demonic, are constituents. We all are spiritual sparks. These spiritual sparks, sooner or later, get attracted towards the material world. As soon as it happens, our transformation from the spiritual spark to the individual soul begins. It is still a rough cut or a rough change. Slowly, because of that attraction, we gravitate towards the material world. Please remember, this may happen to a divine soul, a human soul, or a demonic soul or any other soul which is not human. All spiritual sparks which gravitate towards the material world become souls. As soon as they come near the material world, curious and interested in lording it over, this material world proves to that individual soul that it is far more powerful than the individual soul. And in that case, it covers it with four layers of material body, of which three are subtle and one is gross. As soon as this happens to a soul, this soul becomes a soul entrapped in a material body. This is called a living entity. So please revise this to understand it better. There is a bonfire, a spiritual hole from which spiritual spark flies out. When this spiritual spark gets attracted to the material world, it becomes a soul. When this soul is enveloped with four layers of material body, it becomes a living entity. As soon as a soul entrapped in a material body comes into existence as a living entity, its endless cycle of repeated births and deaths begins to happen. From the initial stages where this living entity is born as a mere cell, it evolves into algae, amoeba, plants, shrubs, weeds, small trees, large trees, worms, insects, reptiles, amphibians, fishes, etc., small beasts, herbivorous beasts, carnivorous beasts, and ultimately as a human being. Here we must remember that even among human beings there are at least 4 lakh species. In other words, there are 4 lakh different species depending upon the evolvement of the living entity of human beings. Once the living entity begins to get birth as a human being, it may be divine, human, or demonic. This is a very long drawn process. Kindly don't be under any impression that a soul, as soon as it becomes human, becomes divine or demonic. In fact, it is just human. However, till now, only the past memories of its birth as those living entities which were not human were stored in its psyche. But as soon as it is born as a human being, its destiny begins. As soon as destiny begins, karma begins. When karma begins, there is a storage of all karma done by that living entity as a human being in different births. This defines the evolvement of that particular human being as a divine person, a human, a demonic person, hellish person, heavenly person, celestial being, angel, demigod, or a rishi, a maharishi, a sage, a saint, etc. All this depends on the individual karma of that particular living being. Such is the cycle of life for every soul and when it becomes a living entity. We must remember this before proceeding further. By now we know that whether a person is divine, human, or demonic is a part and parcel of the super soul. We are all God's creation, and that is the reason why I told you about how God is too complex a person to be reduced to a rule. We do not know what God thinks about any living entity and why he does what he does with the lives of a human living entity. Let us discuss a case history which will define this matter quite better. In the month of December in around 1931 or 32, one boy was a living entity as a human being was born in a place called Jabalpur in the state of Madhya Pradesh in India. He was just an ordinary human living entity. Howsoever, probably because of the previous birth and death of that particular soul, this boy was born with some gifted intelligence and qualities. He was extraordinarily brainy and erudite. Right from his childhood, he began waxing eloquent about subjects of which others, especially in that area, could not understand or visualize or comprehend. People were surprised that this boy was so qualified and intelligent. This guy was used to talking a lot about various subjects as an authority, as if he knew everything. He looked like an, a know all. He talked about God, religion, philosophy, politics, and other such interesting subjects with authority. So much so that while he interested the public, those who were his peers got uneasy and embarrassed with him. This boy was unceremoniously kicked out of various schools, colleges, etc. in Jabalpur, a nearby town of Sagar, or some other city. He was not allowed to teach philosophy in these cities because his peers and his management feared that this guy will brainwash the students. When this happened, this guy thumbed his nose at them and began taking tours all over India and lecturing people and giving them motivational talks. His theories were so controversial that the religious gurus, the political gurus, the social gurus, etc., were very embarrassed with his talk. However, despite all this, the following of this person grew among the public slowly but steadily. Born as Mr. Chandra Mohan Jain, this guy changed his name to Rajneesh and later to Bhagwan Rajneesh. Bhagwan means God. This guy declared to the public that he was an incarnation of God. One day, because of his ill health and thanks to the suggestions from his international followers, this guy relocated to United States of America. Here he built a several acres farm which was called Rajneeshpuram. It was full of meditational centers, airports, hospitals, schools, residential complexes, etc., where his followers, mainly international, resided. Then the United States government came into action and had him removed from the United States. This guy had become so controversial and so too hot to handle that he was refused asylums all over the world in different countries. Ultimately, this guy, despite all this, became an international spiritual and religious icon and came to a place called Pune in the state of Maharashtra, India. Here he continued to preach to his devoted followers and he continued to talk what he thought. He always spoke his mind, despite the fact that the so called nice people among the divine and human society in the world, especially religious gurus and peers of various religions. Despite their protests, this guy assumed or won an iconic status all over the world. This makes one wonder how or what was God's plans. We must remember that this guy was also a spirit part chained soul which had come as a human living entity in this world. What purpose did he serve by lecturing like this. Probably he was catering to changed views of several millions of followers all around the world. He was giving a different concept of life to those who wanted to listen to him. He may not have towed the line as far as religion, spiritualism, God, etc. was concerned, but yet he was tolerated, and not only that, thanks to his personal charisma, he acquired a great deal of wealth. According to him, a person can become a saint or attain self realization by remaining as a commoner in this world, by living a good life, earning money, raising a family, and yet being spiritual in nature. This was one theory that was initially sneered at and jeered at by several people, but which actually impressed many of his followers and shook their own brains and their nerves and made them think about life in a totally different angle. Here we must remember the proverb that I had initially mentioned. God is too complex a person to be reduced to a rule. So we do not know who is right, who is wrong, and why one is right and why one is wrong. There are several very erudite and revered religious and spiritual gurus who will not agree to this man's theory. Yet this man had his own section of trillions of followers all around the world who considered him a Bhagavan or God. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular matter. Please give me your own expert views, ideas, thoughts, and opinions so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.